Hello Matrix and welcome to Was a Matrix. My name is Looney and today we're focusing on your final exam prep for history. All you need to do to send us your questions and comments is search for Was a Matrix on all social media platforms as well as our WhatsApp line. All of the details are on the screen. We also have a cool competition going on for you guys, so please stay tuned to get all of those details later on in the show. I've got our favorite sign language interpreter, Nicoline, as well as our awesome teacher, Mamsi. Thank you so much, guys, and over to you.
Thank you, Looney. Welcome, grade 12 learners. I hope you are all ready for your final exams. If you're not, worry not, because I'm here to give you those last-minute tips, and I hope you will listen carefully and do very, very well in your exams. So, what we're going to do today, as Looney has already told you, we are focusing on History Paper 1, Black Power Movement. I'm going to be using different sources and to show you how the different historical skills should be applied in your exam paper. Okay, let's go. So, these are the source-based skills that you will be expected to display when you're answering questions in the exam. Don't worry about memorizing these skills. I'm just giving them to you so that you know when you look at the questions and when you read the sources, what sort of things you will be expected to do with those sources. Now remember guys, you always read sources with understanding. However, there are other skills that you're expected to know or extract from those sources. So one of the skills that you will be looking at is extracting information from the source. Now what that means is, do you understand the source? So the question that requires you to extract information from the source requires that. You are not required to use your own knowledge, just take out the information from the source. So that question will be testing your understanding or comprehension of the source. Please make sure that you never ever use your own knowledge, but you extract. That means take out something from the source. Okay, you will see the instruction in the question. It will tell you that according to the source, what was this and this? Or what were the 3 reasons according to the source? Always do what you are told to do. And then the next one is comprehension. As I said to you, the first skill that you have to have when you're reading a source is the skill of comprehension. You need to understand what the source is about. It doesn't matter if it is a textual or a visual source. You always have to understand it. That is why, guys, it is very important to learn your work. Because I know there is a myth out there that you don't have to learn anything because the sources will have all the information you need. Remember, you are reading these sources in context. So if you do not have that prior knowledge, that prior learning, you are going to have a problem understanding the sources because sometimes you will not get the context. You will not understand cause and effect. Those are very important skills in history. So please make sure that you learn your work, you know it very well, and then when you read the sources, everything will fall into place. Okay, and then the next skill is defining concepts. Now, you already know that in history, we have concepts or definitions that are specific to the subject, history. So you have to be able to define those concepts in your own words. Doesn't matter if you've seen a definition in a textbook, you can use that definition. That is also allowed. So historical concepts refer to things like communism, capitalism, the Cold War, or Black Power, a movement. You should be able to say in your own words what those things mean. Democracy, nationalism. So if you are a history student, you need to know the meaning of those things. Okay, and then the next skill is interpretation of evidence in the source. So remember earlier I spoke to you about cause and effect. So sometimes you will read a source and it will not tell you why certain things were done. You should be able to interpret and come to a conclusion based on your prior knowledge and what the source says. So it's very important to be able to interpret the source. And this works better as well when you are analyzing a speech. So you need to be able to conclude why a certain political figure said something. Or if you see a photograph or a cartoon, you should be able to say why you think a photographer showed the event in that particular way. So that refers to interpreting the source. That is very important. Then the next skill is evaluation of evidence. So you should be able to evaluate your evidence. Now, what does that mean? It means you should be able to say whether this source, again, it could be visual or textual. Is it a useful source in understanding whatever period in history you will be studying? Because remember, there's no guarantee that at the end of this year, you will definitely get the Black Power movement, or you will definitely get the Civil Rights movement. So you have to study everything that you're supposed to study for this paper, paper 1, and then you know how to analyze the sources. So going back to evaluation, you need to know if the source is useful or not, and you need to know if it's reliable or not. Now, what is the difference between those two things? Useful refers to whether the source can be used. In other words, does it have enough information? Does it tell us enough about the event? Are we able to know or to get a full story about what happened based on just reading that source? Okay. And then when we're talking about whether a source is reliable or not, that is where we're saying, can it be trusted? So for that type of question, you'll be looking at who made the source. When was it made? Why was it made? What type of language do they use to make it? Sometimes you will see a lot of propaganda that is being used, so you can make a conclusion from the type of propaganda that is being used as to why that speech or that cartoon was made. So that will help you understand the context and the attitudes of the time that you will be studying. Okay. And then the next skill is comparing sources. So you should be able to see different types of sources. Sometimes you'll be asked to compare a textual source with a visual source. So it could be a speech, or it could be an extract from a book. And then the question will ask you to compare it to what is shown in the photograph. So in the photograph itself, as you will see later on when we go to analyzing the different questions, you will see that in the photograph you need to be looking for specific things that were mentioned in the textual source to see if there are any similarities or if there are any differences. So in other words, what was said in the textual source that does not appear in the photograph, okay, or the other way around. Okay, sometimes they can ask you to contrast. So when you're comparing, you are looking for similarities, the things that are the same. And then when they ask you to contrast, that means you are looking for differences in terms of what the two people are saying. So sometimes they can give you a speech from, let's say, a person who supported the government of the time, and then a person who was part of the movement that was against the government. So you should be able to compare and contrast what those two sources say. Okay, guys, I hope you understand the different types of sources that we have in history. So what I'm going to do with you now, we are going to analyze a source. We're going to read it together to see what sort of important things you need to pick and underline or highlight from the source in order to understand it. Okay, let's go there. Okay, so remember guys, I told you the importance of reading instructions. Don't forget that. So this instruction says, refer to source A and then answer the questions that follow. So here is source A. Now, the most important thing is that when you get into your exam, you must first read the questions before you read the sources. Okay, here I'm starting with the source because I want us to underline it and look for important things, but read the questions first. And the reason why I'm asking you to read the questions first is because when you go to read the source, then you will be looking for the answers to the questions. In other words, you will be reading the source with the questions in mind and trying to answer those questions. That will save you a lot of time, and it will also help you to understand the source better. So don't just go and read the source before you read the questions. Okay, because you need to know why you are reading that source. Now, when you're reading a source, you will see that all sources come with a caption at the top. That is the information at the top of the source. That caption describes the source. It is very important to read that first. Don't just go straight to the source, because I know that a lot of young people like doing that. They just ignore the caption and they go straight to reading, especially if it's a long text. They think they will run out of time, so they just go and read the text. But read the caption, because part of the answer to some of the questions that you will be asked will be found in that caption. That caption tells you what the source is about. Okay? It also tells you who made it, why it was made, when it was made. So it contains a lot of useful information. Actually, it is part of the source. So don't ignore the caption. Now let's read the source together. It says the source below explains the reasons. So if you look at that, you already know that it says here it explains the reasons. So even before looking at the questions or reading the source itself, you already know what the source is about. Just from reading the caption, you know that this source is going to give you the reasons why the Black Panther Party launched their breakfast program. Now let's look at the source itself to see if it gives us those reasons why the Black Panther Party launched its breakfast program. Okay, it says in 1969, so you can underline or highlight the date. That is very important because it's giving you context. Okay, a group of children sat down to a free breakfast before school. On the menu, chocolate milk, eggs, meat, cereal, and fresh oranges. The scene wouldn't be out of place in a school cafeteria these days. But the federal government wasn't providing the food. This is very important. Okay, remember, I told you we are looking for the reasons why the Black Panther Party launched the breakfast program. It says the federal government was not providing the food. Okay, instead, breakfast was served thanks to the Black Panther Party. So you can already see that the Black Panther Party sort of filled that gap because the government was not providing the food, so they went into the schools and they provided the food. So already you know, okay, this ties in with the caption, as I said to you before, that the caption is about why the Black Panther Party launched the breakfast programs. Okay, let's carry on. The source is a bit long. At the time, the militant Black Nationalist Party was vilified or criticized in the news media and feared by those intimidated by its message. So that would be another reason why the Black Panthers had to step in, because the other party, that is the Black Nationalist Party, was feared by the people. So again, that gives you the reason why the Black Panther Party launched its breakfast program. Okay, let's carry on. It says, feared by those intimidated by its message of black power and its commitment to ending police brutality and subjugation or suppression of Black Americans. But for students eating breakfast, the Black Panthers' politics were less interesting than the meals they were providing. So again, this shows you that the meals that were provided by the Black Panther Party were very important. A lot of people went there because they were getting the food. Remember, we said earlier when we started reading this source, they were getting the food there because the government was not providing the food. Okay, let's read on. It says the children, many of whom had never eaten breakfast before the Black Panthers started their program. The Sun reporter wrote, think the Panthers are groovy and very nice for doing this for them. This is very interesting because, guys, remember earlier I told you that for the people who were receiving the meals, what was important was getting the food. It was not the message of the Panthers. But because the Panthers were giving them the food, that means they were able, through the breakfast program, they were able to also send their political message to the people. Okay, you will already know that from having studied this section. Let's read on. The program may have been groovy, but its purpose was to fuel revolution by encouraging Black people's survival. So again, I'm going to underline the purpose of this. I've already told you that yes, they were giving people and young children the food because the government was not doing it, but the aim behind that was not just to feed them, but it was also to educate them and to influence them to obviously support and follow their political message. That is very important, guys. From 1969 through the early 1970s, the Black Panthers Free Breakfast for School Children program fed tens of thousands of hungry kids. Okay, again, this is very important. People were already hungry because the government was not providing the food. School officials immediately reported results in kids who had free breakfast before school. Okay, so even though the source is about the reasons why the Panthers provided the breakfast, you can see there that the results improved as a result of having the breakfast from the Black Panthers. The school principal came down and told us how different the children were. Ruth Beckford, a parishioner who had helped with the program, said later, they went falling asleep in class. So that would be another result. Okay, so that means they were more focused. So this was a positive thing. They went crying because they were no longer hungry, obviously, with stomach cramps. Food wasn't the only part of the Black Panther Party's social programs. They expanded to cover everything from free medical clinics. So again, remember the caption said that the Black Panther Party provided or launched their breakfast program. However, this source tells you that there were other things they provided, like free medical clinics to community ambulance services and legal clinics. So these are all the things that were provided by the Black Panther Party. So guys, after the break, we are going to look at the questions and how you answer them. So please don't forget the source. You must always bear in mind what we've underlined and what I told you. I'll see you after the break.
Thank you, Mamsi. Guys, let's take a quick break and we'll see you shortly after this. Welcome back from the break, guys. If you've just joined us, we are still doing your exam prep to help with the upcoming exams. If you want to win something, then listen closely. Waza Matrix is bringing you the hashtag WazoWinner competition, where 2 lucky matrix stand a chance to win 2 gigs of data. All you need to do to enter is head on over to our Facebook page and all of the details will be there. Thank you so much, Mamsi, and over to you.
Thank you, Luni. Welcome back, guys. I hope you still remember what we did before the break. Okay, all the tips I gave you and the source we read. Now, guys, remember I told you that I underlined everything because we are not going to go back to the source. So what we are going to do now, we are going to look at a sample of questions. Obviously, we can't do the entire paper. So we're just going to do some questions to show you the different skills that I spoke about when I started. That in paper 1, there are specific skills that they are testing. Okay, let's go to our questions. So if you look at the first question I have here, it says, who, according to the source, provided the free breakfast meals to the children? It says according to the source. It's not according to you or according to your own knowledge. Please follow the instructions. Read the questions carefully. And then another thing that will help you is looking at the mark allocation. So they always give you, it says here, 1 times 2 equals 2. So that means you have to give 1 point. And that point comes directly from the source. It's not from your own learning, it's not from your own knowledge, but it is in the source. Remember, guys, I told you before the break, the importance of reading the questions before reading the source. So if you do that, you will know what to do when you read the source. Now let's look at the answer to this question. So you can see it's the Black Panther Party. So we got that information from the caption of the source and the source itself. Throughout the source, they were telling us the reasons why the Black Panther Party launched its breakfast program. And remember I told you about the mark allocation, that you expected to only give 1 point. And you can see here It is the Black Panther Party. And the skill there is the extraction of evidence from the source. That means that comes straight from source A that we read together before the break. Okay, guys, let's move on to another question. So this question is now testing a different skill. It says you need to comment on the statement. For students eating breakfast, the Black Panthers' politics were less interesting than the meals they were providing. So the statement comes from the source, but the comment, this is your own judgment. Okay, so this is where you are now going to interpret the source. So remember, guys, I told you before the break that you are not going to get all the information you need in the source itself. Sometimes the source is there to jog your memory. Sometimes it gives us specific things, like the one we read before the break. It gave us the reasons why the Black Panther Party launched its breakfast program. Now, what the examiners have done, they've taken a comment from the source and they want you to comment on that. So that is where you make your own judgment. Okay, again, you look at the mark allocation there. It's just giving one judgment that you will have arrived at. So let's look at a possible response there. Okay, these are possible responses. So you could say the children were just enjoying the food and were not aware of the political undertones. In other words, they were not aware of the real reason why the Black Panther Party was doing this, that they were actually trying to get them to their side to support their political cause. Okay, that's one possible response you can give. You don't have to give all of these. These are just possible responses. Or their focus was only on the breakfast and they did not have an interest of knowing why the food was served to them. So it says their focus was only on the breakfast. Or another possible response could be they did not have an interest in the Black Panther Party's politics. So I'm going to underline this. They did not have an interest. They were only interested in the food that they were getting because, again, remember, the government was not providing the food. Okay, so guys, I hope you understand that, and then let's move on. This is another question. Would you agree? Okay, I'm going to underline, would you agree with the statement that the Black Panther Party's free breakfast programs were successful? Again, this question is asking you to make your own judgment. So it's up to you whether you want to agree or you want to disagree. Okay, however, whether you agree or disagree, you need to support your answer with 2 quotes from the source. And you can see from the mark allocation there, you're getting 4 marks. Okay, so you're not going to get a mark for saying I agree or I disagree. Okay, that is the position you've taken, but we need to see the quotes that you're going to take from the source, whether they are in line with the position that you've taken. And that is where you are going to get the marks. So guys, that is very important. So don't write, yes, I agree, and think you're going to get your 2 marks there, and then only give 1 reason. You have to give 2 reasons. It says there, support your answer with 2 quotes from the source. Again, you are supporting by giving the quotes from the source. So you are making your own judgment, but you are using what is already in the source to support that judgment. Again, you are not using your own knowledge or what you've learned, but you are using the quotes from the source. That is very important. Guys, you have to be very, very careful. When a question says use your own knowledge, you do that. Never use the source. Okay, the source means the source is there to help you or jog your memory. However, when it says you need to use 2 quotes from the source, that is what you have to do. Okay, now if you look at the possible answer here, it says the children weren't falling asleep in class. Okay, so the judgment is it was successful because the children weren't falling asleep in class, they weren't crying with stomach cramps, and children were different. Now guys, I hope you remember before the break, I told you that when we were reading the caption told us that the source was about the reasons why the Black Panther Party launched its breakfast program. But when we're analyzing the source, we underlined the results as well. Even though the caption had not told us that the source was going to give the results of the breakfast program. You already know that from reading the source, that there were positive results from the breakfast program, and those are the results, that the children were not falling asleep in class, they were not crying with stomach cramps, and they were different. In other words, they were more focused. Okay, they were looking at their schoolwork instead of worrying about their hunger. Okay, guys, I hope that helps you understand how to make judgments from reading sources and using evidence from the source to support that judgment. That is a very, very important skill, guys. Okay. So that is the end of this segment, guys. So when we come back from the break, we are going to look at a different type of source. So what we were doing now, we were looking at a textual source, how to analyze it. So we underlined important things, okay, and we looked at the caption and all that. But after the break, we are going to look at a visual source, and I'm going to give you tips on how to analyze a visual source. Okay, I'll see you after the break, guys. Over to you, Luni.
Thank you, Mamsi. Matrix, let's take a quick break. But before we do, don't forget to send us your questions and comments on WhatsApp, as well as our other social media platforms. We'll see you straight after this. Welcome back from the break, Matrix. I hope you guys are still enjoying the show. We are in the last stretch, so over to you, Mamsi.
Thanks, Luni. Welcome back, guys. I hope you enjoyed the last two segments and you've gained a lot of skills that are going to help you in your exam. Now, just to recap, guys, remember we looked at source A, which was a textual analysis source that was about the Black Panther Party launching its breakfast program. And remember, we underlined a lot of important things, and I told you the importance of reading the caption. The caption told us that it was about the reasons why the Black Panther Party launched its breakfast program. And then we moved on to looking at a photograph that is a visual source, and we're looking at how that visual source agrees with what the written source had said about the Black Panther Party launching its breakfast program. And remember, I told you the difference between a photograph and a cartoon. Okay, guys, please don't forget those skills. They are very important. So those are the type of sources you are going to get in history: textual and visual. And then they differ from whether it's an extract, it's a speech, okay, or a long paragraph or whatever. Okay, but there are always textual and visual sources. Okay, now let's look at the question. So the question says you have to compare, I'm going to underline, compare sources A and B. Now remember, guys, I told you before the break that you have to know your instruction words. It is very important to read instructions, because if you don't read instructions, you will end up doing the things you are not supposed to do. You might just take it for granted that, no, you know what, I know exactly what I'm expected to do here. But no, sometimes you will make mistakes. Read the instructions carefully. Okay, if you do that, then you will not make mistakes. So you would know that in an exam situation, you will have a lot of sources. Okay, remember I told you that we are not looking at an entire paper here. I just took sample sources and questions just to help you understand some of the skills that you will be expected to display when you're answering your exam questions. So now there will be sources A, B, and C. Okay. Now here they're saying compare sources A and B. And then the question is, how does the information in source 3B, okay, information in source 3B support, this is very important. Now you can see this question already tells you that the information in source 3B supports. In your answer, you cannot dispute that. They are not asking you whether it supports it or not. They are asking you to show how it supports the evidence that is in 3C regarding the community programs of the Black Panther Party. Okay, so you are comparing the two sources. Now guys, remember, comparing means you're looking for similarities. So don't start looking for differences. It's the things that are similar. And then if the question says compare and contrast, then that is where you can say these are the similarities and these are the differences. So it's very important to understand your instruction words. So if you look at the possible answer here, it says source A states that the Black Panther Party started a program of serving black children a breakfast meal, while source B shows how the children are being served with a breakfast. So remember I told you that source A was a textual source, okay, which told us about the reasons why the Black Panther Party launched its breakfast program. And then source B was that photograph, which then showed us in visual form a member of the Black Panther Party serving breakfast. Okay, so as it says here, source A states that the Black Panther Party started a program of serving black children a breakfast meal, while source B shows how black children are being served with a breakfast. Can you see? These are exactly the same ideas. One was shown in textual form, the other one was shown in visual form. So that is how these two sources support each other. And you can see the answer here has given you the similarities. So you should be able to compare the different sources. You are very likely to get a question like that in your exam, where you're asked to compare the different sources. Sometimes you can be asked to compare two textual sources. It won't always be compare a textual with a visual source. Sometimes it can be two visual sources that you have to compare. So one photograph taken by one person and another photograph taken by a different person, and then you're asked to compare those. Or two textual sources, okay, that come from different people, and then you have to compare them. In other words, look for the things that are similar. So that is how you are able to make sense of the event, to show if these two sources agree. Because if the two sources agree, then it is likely that what they say is really what happened. Okay, so that is very important, guys. Now, both sources show the Black Panthers can do things for themselves without relying on white assistance. So again, remember, in the textual source, when we were looking at the reasons why the Black Panther Party launched its breakfast program, we said that it was because the federal government, that is the government in Washington, D.C., in the United States, was not providing the food. That is why the Black Panther Party had to step in and give the food to the children. Okay, so both sources show that Black Panthers can do things for themselves without relying on white assistance. Both sources show how happy the children are to receive the food. So again, you remember in source A, we said that it also told us about the results of the food program, that the children were more focused, they were happy to get the food. And then if you looked at the photograph, you could see their facial expressions, that they were very receptive, they were very happy to receive the food that was offered by the Black Panthers. Okay, guys, I hope that helps you understand how to compare the different sources. Now, we are moving to a different skill, and that is paragraph writing. So you will see that in your history paper 1, and it happens in paper 2 as well. Once you've answered all the short questions, you will be expected to write a paragraph. Okay, now, the skills that you're expected to display when you are writing your paragraph are, remember, we looked at how you interpret sources, okay? We're looking at how you can analyze sources, and then how you can synthesize evidence from the different sources. So in other words, remember I told you that in the paper you will get different sources. So you should be able to put all that information together and present it in a paragraph form. That is important, guys, to be able to take all the information and synthesize it into a paragraph. So those are the skills for paragraph writing. Now let's look at the question. It says, using information from the relevant sources. So you will already have read the sources and you will have worked through them when you were answering those short questions beforehand, as we did. Okay, so you have to use information from the relevant sources and your own knowledge. Guys, that is very important. Okay, I cannot stress the reading and following of instructions more. It's very, very important. So in this case, you're expected to do both. You're using the sources, but you're also using your prior knowledge that you will have gained from learning the section. So it's very important to study your work, as I've already said. So you will see that when they mark your work, you will get marks for the information that you have taken out of the sources, but then they will also be looking for information that comes from your own knowledge of the section or topic. So guys, please make sure that you do both. In fact, what I always suggest to people is that they just quickly plan their paragraph and maybe divide your work into a table. And on the one hand, have information from the sources, and then on the other hand, have information from your own knowledge, just to make sure that you've done both those things. Because what will end up happening if you just go straight into writing a paragraph, you might forget to add your own knowledge. You might just end up just repeating the sources. If you just repeat the sources and you don't give any of your own knowledge, you are not going to do well. Okay, so says then you use the sources and your own knowledge. You need to write a paragraph of about 8 lines. So they give you here, this is a suggestion, the 8 lines. So it could be 10 lines, but it can't be a page long because it's called a paragraph. You are not writing an essay. That means you're not expected to give an introduction, the body, and conclusion. You are just writing a paragraph. Please make sure you do that. And then in that paragraph, what you're expected to do is to explain the impact. So you need to know the meaning of the word impact of the Black Power movement on African Americans in the United States in the 1960s. So in other words, you need to know how the Black Power movement affected the lives of black people. So guys, remember, some of that will come from the sources, but you also need information from your own knowledge. That is important. So I'm not going to give you the suggested answers here because we've already worked through the sources, okay, and I'm expecting you to learn your work. But I just want us to quickly look at part of the rubric that the examiners and the markers use to mark your work. So the rubric is divided into 3 levels. Level 1 is the lowest level, level 2 is the one up, and then level 3 is the highest level. Now I'm only showing you level 3 because I want you all to perform at that level. This is the highest level, okay, because I'm expecting all of you to get A's in history. So this is what we will be looking at. You are able to use relevant evidence from the sources. You're able to demonstrate a thorough understanding of the sources. Now guys, remember when I started, when we were looking at source A, I told you that it is very important to understand the source. So you will be showing that skill again in your paragraph. Okay, so understanding of the impact. So you need to know the meaning of the word impact of the Black Power movement on African Americans in the United States in the 1960s. You're able to use evidence very effectively. In other words, guys, please don't just repeat what the sources are saying. You should be able to rephrase the information in the sources in your own words. That shows that you have understood what the source is saying. Try to do that because you are not asked to quote. The instruction does not say quote evidence from the source, but it says you are using the information from the sources, showing understanding. And that is the only way. you show understanding, is by putting that information in your own words. That is very important. And it has to be in an organized paragraph. Again, guys, please do not write point form. If you write in point form, you are going to lose some marks because it means you have no understanding of what a paragraph is. So please, guys, write a paragraph. As I said before, it's not an essay, it's a paragraph. Okay, and that paragraph should show an understanding of the topic. It should show that you understand this question and the whole topic of the Black Power movement. So guys, I hope you are going to do well in the exam, and I hope that helps you understand how to write a paragraph. Okay, and then just the final thoughts, guys. You need to work through the past exam papers. That's very important because all these questions that I went over with you, they actually come from past papers. So if you work through the past papers, you will find that there will be no surprises when you get into your exam. You have to read the instructions carefully. I don't know how many times I've said that, guys, but it is important because if you don't read the instructions, you are going to make a mistake. Okay, you have to manage your time. You know how long the paper is, okay, and they will give you the time, they will count you down, so you cannot afford to waste time. Remember, I did give you a tip on how to manage your time, that you start with reading the questions before you read the source, so that when you read the source, you're already reading it with understanding. You're already working out an answer to the questions. Because if you read the source, okay, having not seen the questions first, that means you will waste time when it comes to answering the questions. So you have to manage your time. And also, another way of managing your time is what I said before, is looking at the mark allocation. If something is out of 2 marks, you're not expected to write a long paragraph. That means you're just giving 1 point. It will tell you 1 times 2 is 2. So you're just giving 1 point. So don't try and give as much information as you can thinking that you are going to get more marks. It doesn't work like that. In fact, what you are doing, if you do that, you are wasting your time. That means you will not have enough time to write a good, organized paragraph when it comes to that. Okay. And then I just wish you all the best. Guys, I hope you have gained from this presentation on how to answer questions in an exam situation. Okay, guys, over to you, Luni.
Thank you, Mamsi. Matrix, we're wishing you everything of the best. Please use our resources to help you study as well. And a big congratulations to all of our competition winners who will be announced on Facebook after the show. For our schedule, check out www.wasamatrix.co.za, and if you missed any of the lessons, they are available on our YouTube channel. From me, Luni, Nicoline, and Mamsi.
Wasamatrix 2021 Catch-Up is brought to you by the Department of Basic Education, NECT, ETDP SETA, SABC, MultiChoice, and DBE TV on OpenView Channel 122 in partnership with